Hi, my name is Mark Svoboda, and I'm the director of the National Drought Mitigation Center. Today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about flash drought, specifically, if I can borrow from the comic book world, my take on its origin story. The current American Meteorological Society concept is found in the glossary, touches on some key points, characteristics if you will. One being rapid onset, two, accelerated intensification, or severity if you want to think of it in those terms, and importantly, culminating in impacts. I think this is real important as droughts are defined by their impacts. My first mention of the term came back in 2000, a drought in the southern plains, which I'll show you on the next slide. Used it first in the media prior to being put into the literature 2 years later to describe it. And the motivation here was to heighten awareness of drought and find a term that would resonate with people. That other term being flash flood was the idea that people could understand, hey, maybe droughts don't all take months or years to develop. We can have these rapid onset droughts that bring a lot of impacts over a relatively short period of time. And in doing so, we can promote better drought early warning. That was followed by putting that concept into our BAMS article on the Drought Monitor in 2002. Myself and authors of the U.S. Drought Monitor at that time, and some others actually from some of the regional climate centers, talked about cases of flash drought. Again, being a rapid onset type of drought and taking into account the associated impacts. However, this was more of a concept and wasn't really formally defined at that time. Here's the drought I was speaking to that motivated this in the southern plains, where late summer 2000, we had less than 2% of this region, of these three states, in severe drought or D2 or worse. And 8 to 12 weeks later, we were seeing over 80% of the region in severe drought or worse. So rapid onset, to say the least. If we take a little deeper dive, again, we're not just talking about how it ends, but rather how it begins. And so the concept here is that it could manifest itself into a hydrological drought, but it's how it starts is that we're focusing on here in the idea of being rapid onset. Keeping in mind that if there aren't any impacts, are you in drought? So I think there's still that impact piece that's pretty relevant as to whether or not is 2 weeks enough to be a drought if there aren't any impacts, or do you need those impacts? And timing is very important based on region and season, as flash droughts are not going to be the same in the northeastern part of the country as they are in the desert southwest, the southeast, or the Pacific Northwest for that matter. The drought that really put flash drought on the map, the iconic drought, if you will, for flash drought, is 2012. This covered a large footprint over the midsection of the United States. You can see here 3 to 5 class degradations on the change map on the bottom left in the span of 8 to 12 weeks over this region, going from very little drought to a lot of extreme or exceptional drought. More recently, 2017 provided another case study in the northern and high plains where we saw 4 to 5 class degradation, issues with fires, issues with livestock forage, and natural ecosystems as well. The 2012 drought really, that flash drought, really put major emphasis on the research community and developing new tools to help us better monitor and track these sort of flash droughts. Just showing a smattering of products here, don't have time to go into them all, but really this was a way to use much more in the satellite realm to augment our in-situ networks and to increase our spatial and temporal resolutions, and at the end of the day, I believe, our accuracy of tracking these flash droughts. Not that our work's done, but certainly we're in a much better place now than we were 10 years ago. To wrap up, flash drought, I think, is important because droughts cover so many different temporal time footprints, right? Days to decades, as we like to say. A lot of effort on the subseasonal to seasonal forecasting realm, which would be very welcomed, very challenging to bring flash drought into the conversation. I know CPC, the Climate Prediction Center, is working on some new flash drought guidance materials as well. Making sure that we don't let stuff die on the vine or wither on the vine, if you will, as we bring products from research to operations, as this is always a challenge, but many of these products will simply go away if they're not maintained. And it's important that we consider all of those products and then some, not just the ones I showed on the prior slide, because no single driver is going to give you the answer of flash drought, again, because it's different to many different people and to different sectors. But I do hope that flash drought can help us get into a different mindset of thinking about it as a torchbearer for better drought early warning. I think we can do a better job of not being as conservative if we look at some of these new breed tools in, say, for example, the drought monitor, where we can show onset in a much more timely manner. And we did see that between 2012 and 17, where there was a couple months lag back in 2012 to that drought, that flash drought, whereas in 2017 it was literally just a week or two, and we were much more on top of that compared to 2012. Because at the end of the day, there's really no excuse for having drought sneak up on us. And apathy, as you see here in the cartoon, apathy is a big challenge to overcome. Finally, to me, dealing with flash drought isn't just about changing all of our tools in our tool set, but rather our mindset, particularly when it comes to monitoring, decision making, and planning. We have to change it from a slow onset only to consideration for rapid onset events. As slow onset disasters, when it comes to drought, we don't want that to become our only doctrine. And hopefully, by doing so, we can appeal to the shorter decision timelines that resource managers, decision makers, and policymakers have. They're not always going to be looking out at the multi-year time frame. And this flash drought concept is a way to get it on their radar and begin the integration of drought risk management into the decision-making process, practice, and policy. Thank you very much. You can reach me at my email address here for any offline questions. And thanks again for listening in.